Welcome to the Writer's Journey Podcast. I'm Michael Laran, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaran.com.
Hello and welcome to episode 140. 140 is a good number, and I titled the name of this episode, Michael Meet Ted, Amnesia Mode Week 2. And I'll punt the description of what we're going to be talking about in this week's topic because it's kind of a moonshot, and it's one of those things where I'm just going to share it, and if it works, awesome. If it doesn't, then I will give you the postmortem of what I think maybe went wrong. So, quick announcements. I am appearing on the Lawyerpreneur Podcast with Jeremy Richter. It's definitely one of the first legal podcasts I've been on. Jeremy and I talk about entrepreneurship, what it means to be a creative, and the target audience of this show is actually lawyers and how they can be more entrepreneurial. So, this may not be the podcast for many of you listening, but if you happen to be an attorney or a lawyer, Jeremy has a great podcast and he provides some really great resources to help the legal community. So be sure to check that out. I'm also appearing here probably around Thanksgiving. We recorded it yesterday on the Hidden Falls Experience podcast. And this was also a different type of podcast for me because we talk a lot about marketing. And not so much book marketing, but just like marketing concepts in general. So it was really cool to be able to talk about that. We talked a little bit about copywriting. We talked a little bit about storytelling and how that's important and how you can learn to tell your story over the years. And so that was with Alex Vonderhaar. I'll be sure to share that when it comes out. And this past weekend, I successfully spoke at the Writer's Digest annual conference, and that was a lot of fun. Had a lot of great reception, great questions, and yeah, it was definitely a defining experience. I really, really enjoyed it. And yeah, I can say I spoke at a Writer's Digest conference. How cool is that? And we also did a live stream on my community. So right after I finished speaking at Writer's Digest, I logged on and did a live stream where we did a power hour. I'm crazy like that. So I did it with Dale Roberts. And Dale, we have pretty similar channels, and so we did a power hour together, and it was a lot of fun. So I will also drop a link to that if you would like to watch the replay, as it is now available. And yeah, that was those were kind of the big announcements. But I also wanted to remind folks that my Beast Mode collection will be going away very soon. So all of the books that I wrote during Beast Mode, I gathered them into one book for your convenience. You can get it at one price. You can buy it on Google Play and on Kobo and directly on my website. And it's $34.99. If you buy it from me directly, you can get 10% off by using the coupon code TrueFan2020. And anyone who buys it from me directly, that will be entered into a raffle prize giveaway where I'm giving away 30 minutes of free consultation with me to talk about any writing problem that you may have. So think of it as listening to someone who will be a sounding board for any ideas that you have or any problems that you have. And it's my way to give back to you all and really want to make sure that the session is as productive as possible so that if there's any way that I can help you, I would love to be able to do that. And so you can get the Beast Mode collection at authorlevelup.com/Beast Mode. Remember that this offer goes away at $11.59 on November 14th, but I may extend it a couple of days. We'll see. So wins for the week. So this was a pretty big win. It was a first for me in my career. I did 6 speaking appearances in 1 week, which was kind of crazy. So, I even forgot a speaking event that I did. So first things first, I did the Writer's Digest conference. That was on this past Saturday. I did my live stream power hour right after that. The next day on Sunday, I did a workshop where I taught a group of writers how to use Scrivener. And that was kind of a cool thing. It's very similar to my Learn Scrivener in 20 minutes video on YouTube. So I did a guided, here's the power tips and greatest hits of Scrivener. I did that on Sunday. On Monday, I recorded the Ask Ally podcast with Orna Ross. That's our monthly show. And then on Tuesday, I recorded this episode with the Lawyerpreneur Podcast. And then I also, literally right after that, like an hour after that, recorded up the podcast with the Hidden Falls Media Experience with Alex Vonderhaar. And then on Thursday, today as I record this, I'm doing an interview on the Indie Author Podcast with Maddie Dalrymple. And I believe Mark Leslie Lefebvre may be on there too. I'm not sure if he'll be joining. But yes, that, I think if my math is right, that's 6 podcast interviews. And boy, was I tired this past week, but it was a lot of fun and a lot of adrenaline. So lesson learned this week. I've been reading a great book. Guys know I'm in amnesia mode right now. So I've pretended that I've forgotten everything I know about marketing. And I've been reading a great book by Ray Edwards, and it's called Copy That Sells. And I'll drop a link to it in the show notes. Probably one of the best books on copywriting I've read. And I can't even remember if I talked about it last week. I've talked about it on my YouTube community tab and in my blog, but there's just been so many ways that he has presented this concept of copywriting and how to think about it that just ideas have been going off in my head all week about how to approach copywriting in a completely different way that I think will connect with people more. And so one of the things he talked about in this was the idea of bullet points and how there are different types of bullet points and how bullet points get people to read your content more. And so I've been really digging deep into that concept and thinking about my strategy for how I can improve my bullet points in my copy and my book descriptions, particularly in my nonfiction, so that I can make a bigger impact. So I hope to have more to share with that when I'm finished reading this book and finished gathering my thoughts. Now, idea of the week. This has nothing to do with marketing, although maybe a little bit. And it's an idea that I've been floating around. And it's this idea of being able to automate your bookkeeping. So this past Sunday, I sat down and did my income and expenses for the past month. And, the income, I've got my automated sales database tool, and that worked great. And for my expenses, what I usually do is I will save my expenses into a folder on my computer. And I've got a little spreadsheet where I enter in what each expense is, and it kind of tabulates everything and gives me a running total for the year. And it took me about 45 minutes to do my expenses. And I'm like, that's way too long. And I've been looking into a couple of ways to automate that. Now, I'm sure some of you are probably thinking, well, why not just use QuickBooks? And I think I've talked about this in the past. I do use QuickBooks now because I have a new accountant, and they did set me up with a QuickBooks account. But QuickBooks just doesn't give me the kind of insights that I actually need from a business insights perspective. Like QuickBooks will tell you what you've spent, but it puts everything into generic categories, and it just kind of drives me nuts. So I've been thinking of a way to use automation, email parsing, and an app called Zapier to basically take any email that I get that has an expense and automatically enter it into a spreadsheet without me having to do anything. And so it's kind of taking the same approach that I've used with my sales database, so that I have, for the most part, streamlined and automated my sales. I will have streamlined and automated my expenses and bookkeeping, so that I don't have to spend very much time each month doing this. And this is actually, I think, a pretty quick project. I think it could be done. The general concept is there's an app called Zapier. And what Zapier does is it connects web services to each other. So my idea is to connect Gmail to Zapier. And Zapier has this really cool feature called an email parser. And what the email parser does is it can read an email. It can read the contents of an email, and it can extract text from that email. And then Zapier can take that text and put it into a spreadsheet. So the idea is to take those receipts that I get on a monthly basis, like the PayPal receipts or the receipts that come from the same places all the time, teach Zapier how to read those emails. And then every time they come, Zapier just takes it, automates it, and puts it into the spreadsheet without me having to do anything. And so then instead of doing data entry every month, my job is really just to make sure that all of the data got transferred properly. Again, there's some other nuances and things to it, but it's a really interesting idea, and I think I can pull it off, and it won't cost me a thing other than the cost of Zapier each year, which I'm probably already going to pay for anyway. So that's my idea of the week. I challenge you to think about ways that you can automate your own bookkeeping, because as I say, spending time doing data entry is the wrong thing that every author should be doing. So please try not to spend too much of your time in data entry. All right, so topic of this week's episode, going to be a little vulnerable, just throw myself out there, even though it could be a potential failure. So I titled this episode, Michael Meet Ted, because I got the rare opportunity to go for a TED Talk. So yeah, so TED doesn't exist in Des Moines, Iowa. Well, it didn't exist for a while. It used to be here. There used to be a TED franchise. It was TEDx Des Moines, but it's been like 7 or 8 years. Well, it turns out they're back, and they're doing an event in May, and they are looking for speakers. And so I was like, oh, I don't know if I should do this. This is, I don't know. When I think of TED, I think of highly sophisticated speeches and like the best speakers in the world. And it's been one of my secret dreams to do a TED Talk someday. And as I was thinking about this, I was kind of going through these, having these moments of self-doubt, like, is anyone really going to be interested in anything I have to say? And would they really even pick me for this? And I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where you think about yourself and then you compare yourself to other speakers who have been on the TED stage, and it's like, these are some pretty credentialed, like, people with accomplishments and stuff. And it's like, here I am. Not to say I don't have accomplishments, but it's just a little bit different. So anyway, it's kind of funny how the things that you do lead to something. So like I started this Amnesia Mode, and I said that, guys, I'm going to forget everything I know about marketing, and I'm going to relearn everything as if, I'm through the eyes of a child, so to speak. And I've been consuming marketing content religiously every single day. And how interesting is it? It's almost like the universe kind of playing a little, setting me up for something, right? All of a sudden, I just randomly see that TED is accepting speaker applications. And so I was like, okay, whatever feelings I have about this in terms of doubt, I can't deny that this is probably not a coincidence. So it would be silly for me not to go for it, given that I'm so focused on marketing and marketing myself and marketing my books and learning how to get better. So if anything, it's an interesting failure, right? And so basically the deadline was coming up pretty quick. So I had to put everything together really quickly. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to labor over this. I can imagine some people would probably take weeks or days to figure out what they would want to speak on and figure out what their message would be and make sure it was refined and all of that. And I said, no, you guys know I go with a quick tempo. I do things quickly. And so I said, I think I found out about it at 10 o'clock in the morning. I said, basically, I'm going to take today, I'm going to think about it, and by the time I go to bed, I'm going to be done with my application. It will be submitted. And so I kind of came up with some ideas. And when I think about TED, I think I've watched TED Talks for years. There was one year where I watched a TED Talk like every day. So I've watched a lot of TED Talks. And when I think about TED Talks, I think about a person with a very deep subject matter expertise talking about something that has very broad appeal. And I also think about engaging personal stories. And I think about some of the best public speaking appearances that I personally have ever seen. Just a very, very high caliber, very high concept, very professional. And I looked at my platform and kind of looked at some of the things that I've talked about. And there were really only a couple things that I've mentioned that I was like, that even come close to rising to the level of maybe a TED Talk. And I'm not even going to say what it is at this point, but it's actually something that it's something that I've talked about on this show before. It's something that I've actually talked about quite a lot in my email sequence and my autoresponders, but it's not something that is like I've talked about a whole lot, because it's almost like you have to, like, I don't want to get up on stage and talk about writing. Like that's great, but I think they're looking for something broader than that. So I had to expand my scope just a little bit, although it is still very much in my wheelhouse. So anyway, it's interesting concept, but we'll see if they bite. But basically, I had to fill out this application, and then they require you to record a 3 to 5 minute video talking about why you want to be a speaker and what your topic is going to be about. And so pretty much I had to figure out what I was going to do, and I had to get my camera ready and shot it on my DSLR and use my Blue Yeti. So I tried to have a decent production value to it. And as I was preparing the idea and figuring out the concept, I couldn't help but think all of the things that I've kind of done that have gotten me to this point, like that would prepare me for doing something like this. First and foremost, I read a book last year that completely changed how I think about pitching. And it's a book I've shared a number of times on this show. I highly recommend that people buy it because it is a TV executive's guide to pitching almost anything. So Brant Penvidic, he wrote this book called The 3-Minute Rule, and he talks about how the best way to pitch something is to take the core concept of what you are trying to pitch, distill it down, give it an interesting hook, and make sure that you can hit all of the concerns in 3 minutes or less. And he provides a lot of really interesting evidence for this. There's some really famous TV shows that he helped spearhead that he did exactly this. So it's like a proven concept, at least for him. And I thought about that rule, and I pulled that book out again, and I went through some of the old exercises that I did for some old projects. And there's like a 4-part test. The first thing he does, he talks about how you come up with a concept, and then you list as many bullet points as you can, like just bullet points of terms or related concepts or ideas that have to do with your talk. So I came up with a list of like 30 to 40 bullet points that all kind of underscored what it was that I wanted to talk about. Then you take those bullet points and you apply them to a 4-part test. And he calls it the WHAC. So WHAC. The first part of that test is, what is it? Second part is, how does it work? Third part is, are you sure? And then the fourth part is, can you do it? So what you do is you take those bullet points and you slot them into each of those 4 questions. And then what you do is you take the bullet points and you expand them so that each of them are what he calls value statements. So basically you have these bullet points that have values, and then you order them, and then you go through and you figure out which ones are the most important ones, and then you take the ones that are the most impactful, and those become your pitch, right? So that's kind of what I did. That was kind of the process for doing this. Again, like I said, I'll explain more if I get this talk. If I don't get the talk, then I'll still explain it, but it'll be under the guise of the postmortem, what went wrong. So I did that. That was how I came up with the pitch. And then it was really at that point time to turn on the camera so that I could figure out, so that basically I could deliver the pitch. And I basically turned on the camera, spoke as convincingly and authentically as I could about who I was, why the topic was important to me, the platform that I've built over the last 8 years. And YouTube in many ways has prepared me for that, being comfortable on camera. I hope that will show. And also teaching these insurance classes over the past few years has also helped me with distilling a lot of concepts down into the most important parts. And that has been a really important thing. And also, I think just being comfortable behind the microphone, turning the microphone on every week and talking to all of you, turning on my camera every week and talking to you, doing dozens and dozens of podcast appearances and public speaking appearances like Writer's Digest over the years, I feel like have prepared me for this. It's like, I feel like in many ways, it's almost the ultimate test, because it's like, if the process that I use to pitch this, if it works, then it kind of validates everything I've been doing over the past few years. If it doesn't, it doesn't invalidate anything I've been doing. It just shows me that maybe there definitely are some more things that I need to learn and improve on. And that's a great thing. And for me, I'm just proud of myself for filling out the application. I feel like I've won regardless of whether they pick me or not. And you guys win because I can share what worked and what didn't. But I just thought this was such a great opportunity to test my marketing. It is extraordinarily difficult to land TED Talks. A lot of people pitch TED Talks all the time and don't get selected. And, it would be a really cool opportunity. And they apparently provide a lot of coaching. You get a mentor, and there's like a serious time commitment, for people that do this. So I just think it's an opportunity of a lifetime to get on stage and talk to folks and spread some ideas. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. That was kind of the amnesia thing that consumed me over the past day. Other than that, I'm still continuing to learn as much as I can about copywriting and marketing. And I also wanted to let folks know that at some point this month, it will be before Thanksgiving, so this means it's coming very soon. It may come as soon as next week. I'm going to be doing another special live stream talking about my 2021 strategy. So it is specific to me, but I hope that there will be something in there that will be helpful to you as you think about landing on your feet in 2021. The pandemic in many ways has been very good to writers, and it's not going away anytime soon. And so what are some of the things that I'm thinking about as I move into 2021 to help grow my income, improve my sales, improve my stature in the community? And I think that these things are things that a lot of writers probably will share. It's probably not going to be anything new that you've heard in terms of what the strategy is, but some of the actual details and the tactics that I'm using, I think, are going to be a little bit different next year compared to what I'm doing this year. And so for those of you who like strategy and who like to sit around and talk shop about how that works, I would love your input. And hopefully it will be valuable to you, because 2021 will be here before we know it. And I don't know about you all, but I am very eager to see 2020 come to an end. So with that, I recognize that this is a bit of a shorter episode this week, but I hope everybody's doing great. We're dealing with a lot of lockdowns now. So my friends over in the UK, I know things locked down. My friends in Italy, I saw everything go on red alert. And my friends across the United States, things are slowly starting to lock down. Here in Iowa, we are at 100% capacity at hospitals. So that's really scary when you think about all the other things that can happen to people outside of COVID-19, like heart attacks and strokes and elective surgeries and car accidents and all that stuff. And so my thoughts and prayers are with everybody across the country as we start dealing with this again. And my ask is that everybody stay safe. As Dean Wesley Smith said on his blog one day last week, don't take any unnecessary chances. I think that makes perfect sense. And I just want everybody to be safe, wear a mask, protect your loved ones, and we'll get through this together. And if anything, we'll get through this in the comfort of our writing desks by writing and reading more books, right? So hope everybody's doing well. I'll talk to you next week, and have a wonderful week and weekend. Peace.
Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaelaran.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaelaran.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.